Men rely on sexual connection with women to feel love. Oh, thank God. This is why men are preoccupied with women's orgasm. Did she climax? Did she come? Because if she didn't, she won't love me. She won't take care of me. She won't validate me. So I have to please her, just like the little baby in the still face experiment panics when mom is not responsive. My partner's not having an orgasm. I'm on a short leash here.
I mean, I have dated several hundreds of women.
Wow.
That has been my experience. And I know guys who've dated several hundreds of women. Exact same thing. So I'm wondering if it's because of the age range that we're in, that this is possibly why we have these similar experiences.
So any family with young children, I always tell the mom to go away for the weekend. Do not answer your cell phone while you're gone. Do not set up play dates. Do not cook meals in advance. Do not have your friends stop by to check and make sure your husband hasn't killed the kids. Leave and let him figure it out.
Today, modern women seem to have the 666 criteria for a male. You touched on it previously. So the 6-pack, 6-figure income, 100,000 or more, and 6 foot tall. If you are new to this podcast, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share, because that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. If you would like to support this podcast, please check out our merch store on Amazon with the brand Todd and Me. We've got some cool t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, and sweaters. Link will be in the description of this podcast. And if you're now starting a spiritual journey, you would like to start a spiritual journey, or you're currently on a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, please hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 and it will help you to get some magic mushrooms. Enjoy the show and stay tuned, because we have some more great content coming soon. Hello, beautiful and amazing people. Welcome back to the Conscious Man 7 podcast, where we dig into the heart of masculinity, intimacy, and what holds us back from real connection. I am your host, Todd Cave, and today's guest has turned a mirror on an often unseen yet powerful force in relationships: fear. Dr. Avrum Weiss, award-winning psychotherapist and author of Hidden in Plain Sight, reveals how men's fears of being controlled, emotionally overwhelmed, inadequate, and abandoned shape every interaction with their intimate partners. From silent withdrawal to unconscious dominance, these dynamics are running beneath the radar of most relationships. And in a world flooded with social media, OnlyFans, hypersexualization, modern day women's requirements of the 666, 6-pack, 6-figure income, and 6 foot tall, simp culture, and the feminization of men. So how are these hidden fears being trapped and amplified? Today we're going to strip back the layers. We're not just going to expose the problem, we're going to explore how both men and women can take accountability, break out of fear-based patterns, and foster true emotional intimacy. So if you've ever wondered why honest conversations turn into avoidance, why unrealistic partner expectations keep growing, or what happens to love when control and status culture collide, this episode will shift your perspective.
When truth is blurred by lies and misinformation, perception becomes reality. What will you perceive your reality to be?
Liberate your fears and walk with me.
Sit down and meditate. Connect with your soul.
Be a monster, and then learn how to control it.
You gotta be willing to do the work.
So it really goes really deep in terms of words and etymology and what they mean. So this is why it is really hard to really crack the matrix, because there's so many levels and layers to it, Dr. Avrum, a warm welcome to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. How are you today?
I am well. I'm curious what the 7's for.
So basically the 7 represents the 7 chakras in the body, which are the prime energy centers that once completely aligned and full of light and illuminated, will cause the human being to realize their God self. And everything for me is based around consciousness, energy, spirituality. And our conversation today is a very important conversation because it is part of the human experience, which is relationships. And I have seen a huge, huge change in the entire dynamic of relationships, because I remember as a young boy when there was no social media, there was no internet, you would, talk to a girl and she would give you her phone number on a piece of paper. You'd be feeling so excited. And even when you go to meet them, you would call before you leave home, and that was it. And it was just this
from your
trust.
landline.
Correct, and there was always this trust and knowing that the other person would arrive, because there were no mobile phones. So I'm really excited to talk to you today because these are topics that I've wanted to cover for a while. And I think that you bring much context and clarity from a psychology perspective, and also, from the many years that you've been doing it. So let's dive right in.
Sounds good.
So let's talk a little bit about one of the things you've spoken about is men's fear. So let's unmask that a little bit. So you've said that men resist the label of quotation marks afraid at first. So what shifts in them when they see it's true?
The pattern is so consistent that it's almost odd, because it goes the same way almost every time. When I bring up the idea with a man that he might be afraid of a woman, the first response is defensive, which you and I were talking about earlier. First, you get the kind of bow up, because men are not supposed to be afraid, period, and certainly not supposed to be afraid of women. So most men hear that as an insult, like, you wimp, you wuss. But literally within 60 seconds, you can just see a look come over their face, because the idea makes so much sense to them. And then what usually happens is we go back through all the conversations. So we've been talking about their relationships, talking about their friendships, and it never quite makes sense. And then when I introduce this idea, we often go back over the same territory and things start to make sense. It's almost like, like when the doctor changes the lenses when you go for an eye exam. It's like, that's the lens, and you go, oh, I can see now. Now things starting to make a lot more sense.
Okay, so I guess since we're talking about fear, I guess it's best to describe, which of the 4 fears, control, emotion, inadequacy, or abandonment, tends to be the silent number 1 intimacy killer today?
Well, asking the question that way, I would say probably abandonment, but let me come at it a little differently, which is that those fears are listed in the order of from most conscious to least conscious to most moving towards fears. So fears of being controlled, for example, are something that most men recognize, most women recognize, they're aware of it. But when you get down to fears of abandonment, you're talking about fears that are largely unconscious, that are really not recognized. If you say to a group of 10 women, do you think your male partner is afraid that you'll leave him? At least 9 of the 10 would say, no way. But 9 and 10 of the guys would be going, yeah, I kind of am. But it really is. That's why the book's called Hidden in Plain Sight. It's so, once you understand it, you can't not see it, but it really is hidden.
Okay, so basically what you're saying there, and I get the conscious to the unconscious fear, because abandonment is definitely one of those unconscious or subconscious fears that basically determines how we act and react into situations. So to give context, a guy, for example, that maybe his mother, he never had a good relationship with his mother, and he felt like she was never there. He could go into a relationship, and because he's afraid of the woman leaving, subconsciously he could end up leaving first, just to protect that fear of being triggered again of, a woman in his life that he loves leaves him. I get that. But let's delve down a little bit deeper, because when you say that most men would think that their woman would leave them and the women think that the men would not leave them, where is this sort of like disparity in terms of like they're thinking one thing and the men thinking one thing?
Sure. So I would invite you and your listeners to Google the still face experiment, STILL, and you will see a video that will haunt you for years. So in the experiment, babies, little babies, pre-verbal infants, are interacting with their mothers. And they do it in a split screen so you can see both faces at the same time. And it's very clear that there's a conversation. Even though the babies don't have language, there's a conversation. So you and I, even if we didn't speak, I'm looking at your face. I'm seeing how you're responding to what I'm saying. If it looks like you're getting it and you like it, then I'll say more of that. If it looks like you don't like it. So we're fine-tuning each other all the time. That starts in infancy. So the baby makes a cute face, the mom smiles, and the baby's like, oh, that worked. Because keep in mind that human beings are the only animal that is born completely dependent on their caregiver. So humans are the only animal. We can't feed ourselves. We can't get away from danger. We can't do anything when we're born because our heads, we have to be born before we're fully cooked because our brains are so big we can't get through the birth canal if we stayed inside any longer. So we're born not fully developed. So in this experiment, the moms and the infants are doing their thing. They're having a conversation. And then the moms are instructed to look away and look back with a still face, an unexpressive, non-responsive face, not angry, not critical, not hostile, just not responding. And within 60 seconds, most of the infants collapsed. Started sobbing. Some of them lost control of their bowel and bladder. Some of them couldn't. I know, it's astounding. That's what I'm saying. You have to see it. So why is that happening? Because infants know they need their mother's attention. It's a life and death matter. They have to engage their caregiver or they're going to die. So when the caregiver looks away and is not responsive, that is a panic. I need you to pay attention to me. I need you to respond to me. My life depends on it. Okay, you with me? Okay, now, for some reason, the boy babies in this study got more upset and stayed upset longer than the girl baby. Yeah. You make this stuff up.
That's very surprising.
Well, it's not when you realize that in adult heterosexual relationships, when they're arguing, men get more physiologically distressed and it takes them longer to soothe themselves, just like male babies. Because the difference is that for a heterosexual man, when we get involved in a romantic relationship, guess what? Same gender as my mommy. Same gender that I had that still face experiment with. So men relive that early life panic, heterosexual men, with their adult romantic partners. Girls, it's not the same. Because if they're straight, their partner is not the same gender as their mother. And so it doesn't reactivate. So women have other reasons to be afraid of men, but not abandonment. For boys, from our earliest life experience, we have to worry about whether the woman who loves us is going to abandon us, and that doesn't change.
Very, very interesting.
Isn't it? Let me just give you a quick example because it'll help your listeners. I had a guy tell me once that he could tell when his wife was upset with him when he walked in the door. He meant before he saw her that he could feel in the air. Now, who knows if he really could, but think how carefully he's paying attention to whether that he believes that he can tell just in the air whether she's upset.
Wow. I mean, I do agree that everything is energetic. So I would go on a limb and say that it is possible because you can go into a room with people
Absolutely.
and you can feel this tension with no verbal communication at all.
Right.
So I would give him the benefit of the doubt and say that it's possible to feel it. No.
But men are scanning for women's disapproval like that all the time. It's not men who didn't get along with their mothers. It's all straight men all the time.
So you're saying all straight men tend to be looking for the approval of women?
Yes, but I'm going to say it more. It's not like, oh, I'd like an ice cream cone. It's not like a nice thing. We need that approval and validation. And without it, we panic.
So this is interesting. This is probably why when men are trying to date women, and if they're not responding, men tend to, what's the right word?
Panic.
Yes, panic, and then try to communicate more.
Yes.
And send more messages and to call more. Right.
So you know the old saying, women need to have sex, need to feel love to have sex, and men need to have sex to feel loved?
Yes.
That's what we're talking about. Men rely on sexual connection with women to feel loved. Oh, thank God. This is why men are preoccupied with women's orgasm. Did she climax? Did she come? Because if she didn't, she won't love me. She won't take care of me. She won't validate me. So I have to please her, just like the little baby in the still face experiment panics when mom is not responsive. My partner's not having an orgasm. I'm on a short leash here.
Okay. Very, very interesting. So then would you say, because the fears of control, emotion, inadequacy, and abandonment, they're from like conscious to unconscious. Now that we understand the difference between those four, what would you say is the number one silent killer then in intimacy and relationships?
Well, abandonment is the most harmful because it leads to men, when they are in conflict with women, withdrawing, because they're not, and you, I think, mentioned this earlier, might have been before we started recording, but men don't feel as confident of their ability to manage their emotions, so that when the emotional temperature starts to go up in the relationship, they feel overwhelmed and inadequate, and they do everything they can to lower the emotional temperature in the relationship, which of course is like throwing gasoline on a fire, because women are more emotionally comfortable. And so the more men try to tamp it down, the more women escalate. Pretty soon you got small appliances flying around the kitchen and you're like, what were we talking? What the hell just happened? And that's why it happens that way, because men, so I'll give you an everyday example. Woman says to her partner, you know, let's say that they had dinner at the Jones house and they come home and she says, you know, that's so nice that the Joneses, they have date night every week. That's really sweet. They seem so close to each other, and that'd be really nice if we did something like that. So she is making an overture. I'd like to be closer to you. Who would object? Men hear it as, you're not taking me out enough. You're not as good a husband as Mr. Jones. You're falling down on the job. Do better. So the woman is making an emotional approach to emotionally connect, and the man's withdrawing and being defensive, which is why I said to you earlier, I'm not so sure that's more women. And so she's puzzled and confused, like, wait a minute, I'm trying to connect with you and you're pulling out your phone and disappearing. What just happened? They're like this.
So is it possible then that one of the reasons for that could be that men and women speak different languages, like in the sense of, because I find that in my experience as also with being a coach and also having to have managed teams when I was a civil engineer, men tend to respond well to directions. Do this, do that. It's very direct, black and white, and is clear instruction. Now, when women communicate, they may not necessarily communicate that directly to us. So is it possible, because it's not in a direct way, that we internalize it as like, where she's comparing me to that guy. Instead of her just saying, hey, Todd, it was a really good night tonight. Why don't we go on a date next week, Friday, like them? Very clear, direct, and in my mind, and in most men, be like, oh, okay, that's what thing we need to do. We'll do that. Take that off. Job done. I'm doing my job. Is it possible then that because we communicate differently, that this is where some of the conflict can come?
I think you're half right. I think the part you're saying is right, but there's a half missing.
Okay.
So we not only communicate differently, we listen differently. And so even if the woman said it just the way you said it, is likely the man would still feel defensive and attacked, because men are taught that you are what you produce. Your value as a human being is pretty much limited to your capacity to produce and take care of women and children. So that means that anytime a woman says that she would like something different, like she says, this room would look nice painted green, and the guy's hearing, I fell down on the job. I should have painted the room. I should have known she wanted the room painted, and I didn't. She's unhappy with me. The room's not. That's not what she's saying. So that kind of socialization. So what you're talking about in terms of how men and women speak differently, it's important to understand that is learned. That is not innate. That is how men are socialized differently.
Okay, that I agree with that, and I thought it was basically how we were wired, but I guess I can explore that possibility that we were just being taught to be like that.
So there's the recent science on this was a study of 2,000 people. I'm sorry, 2 million people. They studied gender socialization over like hundreds of studies with 2 million different people. And the results were overwhelmingly, this is overwhelmingly learned. So a book I would recommend to you, because if you're interested in men, I highly recommend. In fact, if you could get her on your show, it should be a great guest. Her name is Dr. Judy Chu, C-H-U. Judy Chu is a congresswoman from California and a psychologist. She wrote a book called When Boys Become Boys. She spent 3 years hanging out in a kindergarten, first grade class with the boys, just learning about boys. And she tells a heartbreaking story. At the end of the year, the teacher tells the kids, everybody gets to lead the class in whatever their favorite song of the year was. Little boy stands up and he starts singing a lullaby. What do you think the other boys in the class did when he started singing a lullaby?
Laughed at him.
They
ridiculed him.
Exactly. He then says, I don't like that song. I was just kidding. And starts singing the Marine Corps anthem. So here's a 5-year-old boy who has already learned, do not let other people think you are warm or tender or vulnerable or anything that we associate with femininity. Don't let any of that show. Toughen up, armor up, or you'll be humiliated and shamed.
Yeah, I do agree that there is a overwhelming requirement for men to have those qualities. And we're going to touch on that further in the conversation, because I really want to delve into that, because I find that sometimes it becomes unrealistic from a man's point of view, and it leads to a lot of imbalance, right?
Exactly right. It's always unrealistic because it's half a human. You know, we're asking men to be half of who they are.
Yeah, agreed.
So it's not healthy. It's unrealistic. It causes men a great deal of pain. So this goes back to earlier in life. For most boys, their fathers are not as involved in their raising as their mothers. And so dads tend to come into the picture around the time you go to school. Dads get more involved. Dads then offer a choice to boys. Dads, as men who have privilege, represent access to the privilege in the world that goes to men. Power, privilege, status. Dad says, you're masculine like me, so you can have this power and privilege like I do. But there's a cost. In order to have this power and privilege, you have to give up anything about you that is associated with femininity. You can't have close friends. You can't be warm and tender and intimate. You can't be vulnerable, because those things we think of as feminine, and to be a man, you can't be those things. So they create a forced choice for their sons, which I think is a wound that men carry for the rest of their lives. All of us.
Yeah, I concur, because women overwhelmingly punish men today when men are vulnerable and display any signs of weakness. Overwhelmingly punish them.
I don't agree with you about that. I really don't. I think that that's exactly, first of all, you have to understand women are very conflicted too. So if you listen to women, they will say what you just said is exactly what they want. But then you go and you read women's erotica, and it's all about men who are domineering and controlling and powerful and take them almost by force. But that's an internal split. So I think what you're talking about is the result of internal conflicts for women.
What I call it is what they are attracted to, because I find what women are attracted to and what women say they want tends to be different.
That's what the conflict is, exactly.
Because this is why I made the statement that women overwhelmingly punish men when they're vulnerable. So what I have found in my experience and talking to other men, and I've watched several hundred interviews with women, they mostly say they want this. But the moment that the man does that, their internal wiring seems to repel it. And there's a classic example. There was a champion UFC fighter, and he lost the bout. And when he was getting defeated, his girlfriend said that, yes, she can understand he was being defeated, but the way he was being defeated was almost like he was soft and he was a wimp. And that shut down her sexual attraction to him. And they eventually finished in the end, right?
So I'm really caught in a limb here with you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't sound like you like women a lot.
No, I love women. I absolutely love women.
You sound like you like women.
But what I see is that
you're saying some very global, critical things of women.
Well, but there's the thing. Are these things true or not? That's the thing.
Well, we disagree about whether they're true or not, but the impression I'm getting is that you don't like women a lot.
Okay, explain why.
I just did. You just made a very global, critical, negative statement about women. Most women attack men. So that is not my experience. So in my experience working with couples, almost every single time that a guy shows up and is more vulnerable, his wife is very attracted to that. I have a very different experience from yours.
Okay. So is it possible then that it is more the modern women then? Because of my age, the women that I would date would be in that modern day era. And because of my age range, the people that I have associated with, or friends or males that I talk to, tend to have the same exact experience.
Uh-huh. Well, let's go with your example of a mixed martial arts, was it? Or something?
Yes, it was mixed martial arts, yeah.
Okay. So a woman who is attracted to a man who's a mixed martial arts fighter has a certain idea about what she finds attractive. I'm not sure that's how most women find this attractive. So in other words, we're talking about two probably very different women. So this is a woman who already is attracted to men who are tough and strong and powerful. And so for her, I can understand why she might be turned off. I just don't think that's so representative of women.
But like I said, I think is the age ranges, because I have dated several hundreds of women.
Wow.
And that has been my experience. And I know guys who've dated several hundreds of women. Exact same thing. So I'm wondering if it's because of the age range that we're in, that this is possibly why we have these similar experiences.
I don't know. I certainly work with a lot of younger men and don't find that to be the case in the younger men I work with. I don't know why your experience is so different from mine, but I will say it's sad to hear that that's your experience and that that's the experience of the men you know, because here's a piece that may help put the two different perceptions together. Here's the part of what you're saying that I get. So I most recently have been working on a book about what women learn from their mothers about men. Because I think what you're talking about is women are often taught in subtle ways by their mothers to not trust men.
Interesting. All right. I'll put what you're saying on the shelf so that I can come back to it, because I don't dismiss information. What I do is I put it on the shelf so that if more information comes in that aligns with it, I can take it off the shelf. So I'm very open-minded to what you're saying, but just...
And I'll do the same with your experience. Be interested in it and sort of curious about why it's so different.
But just so people listening here, I absolutely love women. I have a mother that I love dearly, a sister I love to bits. And so I do love women.
So may I ask you a personal question? Is that okay?
Go on.
Why do you think you've dated hundreds of women and not found a partner?
That's a good question, because when I was growing up, because I was born in Barbados, and one of the I guess I don't know if the right word is cultural or that's how it is, but all the guys that I used to hang with used to just date loads of girls.
Huh.
So that was just what we did.
Interesting.
And yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily a Caribbean thing, or I guess mostly men tend to want to do that. Like, I guess men tend to want to date many girls. So yeah, that was just it. And then obviously, growing up there, seeing loads of guys with loads of girls, then that was always, like you said, a status symbol. So I guess all of the guys that I knew, even in my age range, like when we taught them, they've dated several hundreds of women as well because of that same thing. And, when you're young, you start working, you partying, then you go through that phase as well, So I've learned a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I did not hundreds, but I dated a fair number of women when I was single, and it got old for me.
This is exactly it. I find now that I'm in my 40s, I actually am the opposite, because I guess I don't know what's the right thing, if it's good for men to date loads of women in their youth or when they get to a certain status to do it. I don't know. But what I do know is that for most men that have done that and then they start to view life differently, they tend to not really be aligned so much in dating many, many, many women, because you realize then that it's a matter of valuing your time, and then like people in my age range having family, so your priorities change, So for me now, obviously I love women, so if I see a beautiful woman, I'm going to talk to her, but I am not driven like how I used to be when I was younger to do that. In fact, sometimes now I actually wait up like, do I really actually want to do that? Because I've got so much going on. So it becomes sometimes a little bit of a logical decision based on what's going on in my life, because that sort of like comparison with other men is no longer there, because I don't feel inadequate like how I would when I was in my early teens,
Right. And I assume a lot of your friends are in relationships, so they're not, they're busy.
Yeah, they're busy, right? So I tend to now just look at personal growth, and I like girls, and if I see a young girl and she looks good, but I'm not sort of like driven like how I used to be in my youth, where like for us it was, because at 18 years old, you going out, everyone is just trying to compete with each other and see how many girls you can get, right? So that tends to stay in your life until your latter years, and then afterwards you tend to.
That's actually biologically driven. And I can't quote you the numbers, but I think the figure for women is something like 96% of women will have a baby. The number's lower for men. So it is not as much of a sure thing for men. It's something like 85 or something for men. So men are actually biologically competing to be the ones to have our DNA continue to the next generation. There's actually a biological basis.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's one of the reasons which drives men to want to have many women, because of that biological thing. And I think it comes from, I'm going to go on a limb here, but I think it was different observation comes from like when back in the days when men used to go to war, physical war fighting, and they may never come home from a war. So the idea is that, okay, let me spread my seed as much as I can so that my family name would go on. And I think that over time, when wars stop being like that, and then we more compete in a social status environment, that wiring is still there.
Instagram.
You know what I mean? So I think that biological wiring is still there, where men want to exercise their options, because
and men have options. Men can father many children with many women, and women can have one child at a time with one partner.
Correct. Okay. So what's a surprising way you've witnessed one of the fears that we spoke about sneak into therapy?
I like that question. The one that I hear the most often that still is sort of interesting is men often feel criticized by women. So there's a piece of it that's real, and there's a piece of it that's just hypersensitivity. So sometimes if I'm sitting with a couple, the man will say, see, what she said just then, that's critical. And I'm like, maybe it was a little critical, but you're seeing it as much more critical. And I think that comes from that whole, my job is to keep you happy. And if you're not happy, you're telling me I'm not doing my job. I'm not adequate. The part that they're accurately sensing is what we were just talking about, which is that women are often taught to be critical of men. So it's shocking to me, just in a social situation. Oh, I just saw a clip that your listeners would probably really like. I don't know how you find it, but Bill Maher, the comedian Bill Maher, he did a hilarious piece about how critical the culture is of men. It's really good. And he goes through all these TV shows and movies in which men are sort of emotional cripples and dumbasses. He names all these TV shows that were so popular. And he said, look at the dads in these shows. They're all idiots. They're all morons. And the women all treat them like they're not capable of taking care of a child on their own. And so that's the reality piece of it, is that women are taught by their mothers to not think a lot of men, to not count on them.
The thing is, I get to some degree why that is the case, because we have I guess I would say from the 70s where men have been less present in the household.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think there are various factors for that: feminism, birth control, the de-dollarization. Well, certainly rephrase that. The taking away of the gold backing of the dollar. So it caused the purchasing power of the dollar to go down, which affected everything worldwide. The introduction of crack into the ghetto and drugs and weapons. So I think it's a combination of things.
Yeah.
So it's not just one thing. So I do get why women would be like that. But the thing is that I think because that's such a general statement, possibly when a good guy does come in, it's kind of difficult to see.
Exactly.
Is this guy actually a good guy? Is he?
Because she has a knee-jerk reaction from her training to be suspicious. You got your finger exactly on it, because then it's hard for her to see that he is not that guy, that he is trying to be a good dad, good husband, a good dad.
And there's this understanding now that like a lot of the good men come last. The men that try to do the right things heavily get punished, which is why I said earlier that I find in my experience and in talking to many, many, many men that has been their experience as well.
Well, I would say to you and to any of those men, if you feel punished for doing the right thing, you're with the wrong woman.
I agree.
Run away.
I agree. And I think that one of the things that we as men need to do is to take better accountability in choosing the right woman to have a family with, to even be in a relationship with. I think there's some accountability that we need to take as well.
Yeah.
But I guess the abandonment issue comes in a lot where it affects our judgment.
So let me tell you a simple exercise that I suggest to people that if your listeners are willing to try it, it will change their whole family. It's a very simple thing to do. And I can almost guarantee it will change how things go in your family. And it's very much about what we're talking about. So any family with young children, I always tell the mom to go away for the weekend. Do not answer your cell phone while you're gone. Do not set up play dates. Do not cook meals in advance. Do not have your friends stop by to check and make sure your husband hasn't killed the kids. Leave and let him figure it out. Okay? So we get a lot of frozen meals and hot dogs served that weekend. And nobody gets to bed on time. But when they come back, what do you think women find when they come back? See the smile on your face? You know what they find.
They find kids that are happy. They find...
And dads who are...
Dads that are also happy because they're getting to spend time with their kids.
And they're confident because women supervise men's parenting. They hover because they're taught by their mothers that men are not to be trusted with children. So I say to guys, sending your wife out of town is the only unsupervised parenting experience you're going to get unless you get up in the middle of the night, which I also recommend. So you come back and the whole family's changed because now instead of one supervising parent and one employee parent, you have two parents and he finds so he doesn't give the kids a bath the way she says they should have a bath. He has to figure out how to give a kid a bath. It's not that hard, right? It's not rocket science. He figures out his own way that he's comfortable with. And now the next time they're both home, he says, I'll give a kid the bath because I feel confident that I know how to do that. And it's fun. It changes the dynamics in the family. It's a fabulous experiment.
That's a brilliant idea. I absolutely love it because it's true. I never thought about it that men are supervised in their parenting. And
this is why I tell guys to get up in the middle of the night with kids and they look at me like, that's our job. I'm like, you're wrong. You're missing out the best time with your kids. You are getting the short end of the stick by not getting up in the middle of the night. You're protecting your sleep, but you're missing out this lovely. My first child was colicky and was up 3 or 4 hours every night. I was the one who got up with him because it was quiet. I would take off my shirt, hold him close to me. It was so wonderful and so intimate. I didn't mind the sleep loss.
And the thing is that those are moments that as a man, you will never forget ever.
Absolutely. And as a son.
True. It's
not just a woman you can be close with. I look at my son now and I see how many close male friends he has. And I say that might have a little something to do with those 3 or 4 hours in the middle of the night. Because he was very close with a man early in his life.
Yeah.
It's different. When I take off my shirt, it's all hairy. His mother wasn't. It's just there's some basic differences.
It's true. So let's talk a little bit about masculinity in our culture, because you started to delve into that. So you've called masculinity fragile. So how does early socialization, choosing power over tenderness, manifest as fear in adult relationships?
It's just to start to say, it's not me who came up with that term. That is a common term in people like me who do research and studying men. It's not my term. The idea behind it is that if you ask a woman, when did you know you were female? They will say, the moment I was born. Women have an innate sense of their gender as feminine that it just happens. It's just part of who you are. It's like you're tall or you're short or it's just part of who you are. For men, it tends to be different. We teach men that masculinity is something you have to earn and defend and never relax your vigilance about, so that somebody can accuse you of not being masculine like the boy in the class who sang the lullaby at any time. And so you always have to be on guard. So your sense of masculinity is fragile in that it's easily threatened. So when women say, how come we don't go out, with like the Joneses do, it's taken as a slight by the man, not as an invitation, but as a criticism. I'm not doing it right. I'm not taking my wife out enough. And that's what the researchers are talking about with it. So in terms of masculinity, I think part of the reason that men live 7 years shorter than women. And I think that's part of the reason why is that we live under this strain all the time of, are we good enough? Are we man enough? Are we up to snuff? Or is somebody going to see us as weak, feminine, or not masculine?
Okay, so I've got a question then. So even when you look at the animal world, men or the males in lions or bears, it doesn't matter. They fight for dominance to have access to the females. So the men, even the male species, even in the animal kingdom, understand competition as that's the default way of being and interacting between men, because it's like men see things in hierarchy and in terms of like respect. So if we transfer that understanding from the animal kingdom to men, is it just not part of being a man where, like, okay, let's say that, okay, the masculinity is fragile, but how else then can we show up then? Because men tend to compete with one another and we tend to have a different reality from women where there is a burden on us to produce. There is a burden to be able to deliver. And when you can't deliver and produce, then you're heavily punished for that. And then your stock or your status or the attraction from a woman goes down.
Right.
So if masculinity is fragile, then how else then can we like compete? Or if we don't have to compete, how can we circumvent the fragility? And also there's this built-in competition in terms of men versus men.
Great question. And the answer is it's not either or. And we treat it as if it's either or. So what I mean is, for example, I played competitive basketball most of my life. I loved it. I loved the aggression, the physicality. You can push and shove and box out. I loved it. Too old to play anymore. That's what I miss, is the competition and the aggression. The aggression within, there's a ref. And when you go too far, the ref calls a foul. So you're free to express your competitiveness and aggression because there's boundaries and rules. I miss that terribly. Okay? So it's not that those are bad things. It's that we tell men you can only be these things. We don't want you to be these other things. So the answer is we're all of that. The same person who held his little infant, held his infant son for 3 hours in the night is the same person that kicked your ass on the basketball court. They're all me. And to be a full person, I want to be able to I want to be both. I want to develop the parts of me that are competitive and aggressive, and I want to develop the parts of me that are tender and vulnerable. I don't want people telling me you can be this, but you can't be that.
Yeah, society tends to basically put men to be just only to be hyper competitive, hyper focused, and only be judged on that. And I mean, the thing is I'm seeing a little bit of a shift where that sort of like the feminine part of men is being more embraced now, and I think it's great. And
can I interrupt just 1 second?
Yeah.
I don't want to call it the feminine part of men, right? It's not feminine. It's as much masculine as it is feminine. I think that's a stereotype to say the feminine part. We have as much claim to tenderness and vulnerability and warmth as any woman. I've only written one letter to the editor in my life. When my kids were little, there was a story in the newspaper that talked about Mr. Mom. And I wrote and I said, that's so offensive. Men who take care of their children are called fathers, not Mr. Mom. They're not behaving like a woman. They're behaving like a man. This is part of what men do. So is emotional warmth and tenderness. It's not feminine. It's as masculine as anything else.
Okay, so let's lean into that. So would you say then that it just looks different from how a woman would do it, and it's just the male version? Because Carl Jung, he calls it the amina and the aminus. Mm-hmm. So the amina is the feminine part in the male, and the aminus is the masculine part in the female. Mm-hmm. So then would you say then that is more men leaning into the amina? It may just look a little bit different, but it has similar attributes.
Absolutely. And Jung is a great example to use because Jung believes what I just said. Jung believed that the healthy person has the capacity to be all parts of himself. So when if you're in a meeting at work, you want to access your competitive self. If you're in a, you want to be able to be competitive and aggression there. But when you go home and you're putting your baby to bed, that's not the part of you want. You don't want to be limited to that, right? And so we all have the capacity for all kinds of wonderful things. And it's just that we teach people, oh, no, that's not okay. And I'm saying they're all human. They're all part of what a man is.
Yes. I agree. And from reading his work, I tend to, that's why I call it the feminine, but I guess you can use the term the amina, the aminus.
Yeah.
It just looks a little bit different, but I guess it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So,
I do psychotherapy groups. So I work with a lot of men and I do groups with men. And I'm telling you, if you watch the videotape of the groups I do, you would hear men being tender and sweet and talking about how much they matter to each other and you're important in my life. And that's how guys can be with each other. We don't have to just talk about sports. I like talking about sports. I'm not saying guys, I love talking about sports, but I also like talking more personally. And I don't want anybody telling me I can't do one or the other.
True. So does the critique of toxic masculinity help men feel safe to change or push them deeper into defense?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a great question because the answer is the latter. And so most of the people in my world, people who are studying this kind of stuff, don't use the term toxic masculinity anymore for exactly the reason that you say, which is men tend to feel blamed and pathologized by that term. So instead, we're using the term traditional masculinity. And this goes back to you were talking about how generations are changing. There's no question that, so when I had my kids, there was a popular joke. What do you call a dad in the park on a Saturday with his kids? Punchline was divorced. Sad. Because, so I had my kids 38 years ago. So one generation ago, it was a joke. Men being in a park with their kids was a joke. I remember the first time I saw a changing table in the bathroom of a fast food restaurant. Didn't used to be any, only in the women's rooms, not in the men's rooms. I walked into them, and so I've been changing my kids' diapers on, filthy, nasty fast food sinks. I walked in, I saw a changing table, I burst into tears. I was like, oh my God, somebody actually understands that fathers change diapers too, not just mothers. That's how much things have changed in one generation. And then your kids are going to have my grandkids, your kids, it's probably going to change that much and more. So we're trying to make it better because we understand that men are in a bad way. We can see the data that men are not doing well by any measure at all. And it's trending this way. And so I think people are beginning to start to understand that and say, well, we can't just leave men out of the world. We kind of, even though we're mad at men, we still have to treat them with compassion and respect and try to help them be better.
Yeah, it's almost like the pendulum has swung so far to the other side where, there's an argument that, men heavily suppress women. And I think to some degree that's true. But then now we have a heavy suppression of men now. So it's like we have extremes. We don't have like balance.
I have a wind-up clock. I have a pendulum clock, and that, in fact, is what a pendulum does. There's no way around it. That's what pendulums do. That's how change happens. It does go from. So hopefully, in your generation, we'll come back towards the middle. So one of the things that I've been working on that I feel very strongly about is I've been very critical of my profession for what I call male bashing. So I see stuff that therapists say all the time that horrifies me. The way they talk about men is so critical and so demeaning. And these are people who are working with men. And so I've been doing workshops for therapists around the country, teaching them the subtle ways in which they demean men.
Yeah, I do agree. Men are heavily bashed these days. And one of the things that has done is affected dating. So let's talk a little bit about dating and the digital disruption. So you've said dating feels like a task. So how does that mindset trigger fear?
I think that dating feels like a task because of social media. I think because, like you said, when you were younger, you meet a pretty girl, you ask for her phone number. Now, how many girls are you going to meet this week, right? You maybe one or two. If you have a really good week. But online, you could meet 50 this week, right? So it just becomes saturation. It just becomes. So I actually was a consultant to a matchmaking company for a while. So I did a lot of this work. It was a lot of fun. And what I said to them is what you need to get across to your people is dating is supposed to be fun. For God's sake, don't go for coffee. Such pressure to sit. It's like a job interview. Like, oh my God, how could you possibly have fun like that? Go bowling, go hiking, go dancing, go to a movie, go invite somebody to do something with you that you like to do. Because let's say, for example, you're a tennis player and you're a big tennis player and you love to play tennis and you want to ask Mary out on a date. You invite her to play tennis. Well, Mary's getting to know something important about you, which is you love tennis. And when you play tennis with somebody, you learn a lot about them. Do they rush the net? Do they stay back? You learn things playing sports with people. So on a date, number one, have a good time. Invite somebody to do something with you that's fun. Put your best foot forward. If you're a tennis player and you invite Mary to go play, she's seeing your best self. She's seeing one of the best parts of you. So you're putting yourself in a good light. And then the second date is easy. I always ask people, did you have a good time? They say yes. I say, well, then see them again. If you didn't have a good time, don't. If you had fun, why wouldn't you want to go spend another time with somebody you had fun with? It's pretty simple. It's not like your sign or all these deep, things you're trying to figure out. It's not that complicated. I ask people who are dating, what do you think married couples spend most of their time doing? And they say, oh, sex. Or I'm like, I wish, but that's, that's never true. Or deep conversation. I know what married couples spend more time than anything else doing is hanging out. Just hanging out. So when you're dating, you're looking for somebody you like to hang out with. Again, it's very simple.
I like that. I mean, while I 100% agree with that, but I don't know how come the shift happened where it's always if you go on a date, go and have a coffee or a meal or something like that instead of doing something fun. You know what I mean? Like hiking, bowling.
Too much pressure.
It's because it's mad because I remember as a kid, and I'm talking like 14 to like when I was like a young man. In Barbados, a date would be like go for ice cream and then you'll go for a walk, right?
It's great. That's great.
Today, there's some girls that's a no-go because you're not spending money.
So what? Then don't date them.
True.
So what? See, that's the number one mistake people make about dating. You just nailed it. People treat dating as if it were a popularity contest to try to get as many people as possible to like you. That's not the point of dating. Dating is to get one person to like you, just one. So if 20 people don't like you, those weren't the right people. If you like going for ice cream and a walk, then invite people to have ice cream and go for a walk. And if they don't want to do it, that's not the right person.
It's true. It's
Be
true.
you.
It's true. So with OnlyFans monetizing intimacy, how does that affect men's fear of inadequacy or abandonment?
With what monetizing intimacy?
OnlyFans.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so OnlyFans is a platform where originally was designed for like maybe celebrities and creators that give access to their fans for like content they don't normally publish. But what has happened is that a lot of sex work has gone into the platform now, and it is extremely huge now. I think like the top creators make millions and millions per year, like literal millions. So they're basically performing straight up hardcore pornography, and they're doing pictures and having videos of them in provocative ways. So what's happened now is that has infiltrated the consciousness now, especially of young girls. So you have a lot of these girls on Instagram that are basically putting a lot of raunchy and debaucherous content on there to get people to follow them on their OnlyFans page. Then they can sell them their subscriptions and stuff. Like, because I use Instagram a lot for my business and for work, I see it a lot, and it has taken over. So now a lot of young girls, I mean, I think is this mad study where I think they said there's like 2 million girls in the United States now, young girls are on OnlyFans. I think the population is 350 million. So that's like 165, give or take, each sex, and 170, sorry. And then basically out of those, you have another 80 million that are like young adults. And then when it comes down, it is like 20% of the girls between like the age of 18 and 25 are into that. So then what is that going to do now to affect men's fears of inadequacy or abandonment? Because we basically have hardcore pornography online at the click of a button through a social media app that is just bombarding them all the time.
It's not only hardcore pornography. What's really most insidious about that is that it's not real. So there's nothing about it that's real. It's not a film. It's not a video of two people being intimate with each other. It's a video of two people engaged in a physical act. And so there was a marvelous story the New York Times did years ago where they interviewed young teenage boys about where they learned about sex and what they learned. And of course, no surprise, they learned overwhelmingly from pornography. And what they learned was girls like it rough. You have to have a giant penis or no girl will want you. And they learned crazy stuff. And so then they go out on a date and the girl is saying, well, just talk to me, be sweet, be tender. Let's get to know each other. But then I saw this stuff from pornography. I think she wants me to be this guy. Well, I don't know which guy I'm supposed to be. And I don't know if it's okay to kiss her. And I don't know if it's okay. I'm so glad I'm not a young man right now. Or a young woman for that matter.
I tell you, I really feel for the younger generation because I'm 43 and I remember when there was no internet. I remember when internet first came in. I remember Atari, Sega Genesis. So I was in that generation where it was like you used to make toys and play physically, and then we had the shift to that. So I can relate to both sides. But where we are now is staggering, right?
I always think about the parents. When you tell me stories like that about kids, I'm thinking each of those kids had parents who may or may not know that that's what their kid is up to, and who would be so devastated to know that their little girl is online with that kind of stuff.
Especially no, because most parents today tend to stick technology in the children's hands and they don't actually do parenting. You know?
Yeah, that's a non-parent speaking there. So I'm going to speak more from the parent point of view, which is parents are, I know good parents who are doing everything they can to control their kids' technology. And the kids are smarter at it than they are. So they put all these apps on their phones and stuff that block this and monitor this. The kids will find workarounds. So it's just really hard for parents. And, they say, well, I'm not going to get you a phone until you're 15. All my friends have a phone. I won't have any friends. It's a really tough spot for parents.
I do think there's some balance, that needs to be done. But
I agree.
I think that we should promote children to read more books than anything else. Because
as an author, I thank you.
Because the way I see it is that as a child that was born in the 80s, we only either had books to occupy ourselves or physical toys. Mm-hmm. And today, overwhelmingly, you're seeing children, 18 months and stuff, having smartphones and tablets. And I think that the technology is very addicted to us. What about the children? So I think it's kind of like destroying part of the children's brains, which is why I said about, maybe not putting so much technology in their hands, because
it's hard to do. The boys have very limited screen access, maybe a half an hour a day, an hour at most. It was amazing to watch them. Bright, happy, interactive kids. Put them in front of a screen. They look like freaking heroin addicts. They go blank. I'm like, hello. We've just been playing and having a great time. And then they look literally like drug addicts. And I guess that's kind of what it is. But for kids who aren't on screens a lot, the contrast was so vivid to see how it affected them was just, and I don't think their parents can say you can never be on a screen. And this is like they're watching Magic School Bus here. This is not racy stuff. This is kid stuff. But it just, you just go completely passive. One of the things I always ask people to do, another experiment, is people always say, oh, I just got to watch TV. I got to relax. I'm like, really? Okay. What I want you to do is when you sit down and watch TV, I want you to rate your energy levels 0 to 10. And then when you're done watching TV, I want you to rate your energy level again. What do you think happens?
Yeah, definitely it plummets watching TV.
But people think it relaxes them, but it doesn't. It numbs them out. I watch TV. I'm not like a purist here. I like TV, but I don't watch a lot of TV because it's not good for your heart or your brain.
It's true. So getting back to dating, so today modern women seem to have the 666 criteria for a male. You touched on it previously.
You used that phrase before. I'd never heard it before. That's a great phrase.
Yeah, the six-pack trilogy. Uh-huh. So the six-pack, 6-figure income, 100,000 or more, and 6 foot tall.
Well, I'm 1 for 3. I'm 6 feet tall.
And this seems, so is it grounded in aspiration or fear? And if so, what's driving this unrealistic requirement?
For who? Is it
for women? So women seem to have this, modern day women, a lot of them seem to have this as their criteria. 6-pack, 6 figures, and 6 foot tall.
The thing that's changed the most in this regard is women now, they still don't earn as much as men, but a lot of marriage was based on financial dependency. Women needed men to take care of them financially. My mom was a lawyer, but didn't work. My father was a teacher who made nothing. So we lived on one teacher's salary while my mom, the lawyer, was sitting there at home. It's crazy, right? The ceiling is literally falling in and my mom's sitting at home. But that's changing. And so now women don't need men as much financially. And so we have to reformulate marriage because it's no longer based on financial dependency. So what's happening is women are leaving marriages in an increasing rate. Women are saying, you know what? I can make my own money. I don't really need you. And so we have to find a different form for marriage than financial dependence. We have to find something else to make it work because that has run its course and is no longer. So women are the ones who are initiating more and more divorces now.
Yeah, I think it's like 80% of all marriages now and relationships are ended by women.
Wow. I hadn't seen figures that high, but I know it's more women than men.
And it gets scarier. So for girls, for girls that are university educated, that number goes up to
Much higher,
90%.
Yeah.
So
and what's interesting is women still initiate marriage more than men do. So women are really just disappointed. So they've been sold a bill of goods about, they read bride magazines when they're little and they think about being a bride and all that stuff. They have this ideal picture of and then they didn't like that. And so they're the ones who are more excited about it, and they're the ones who become more disillusioned.
There's some parts of the internet that say that women want to be married, but they don't want to be wives.
Would you? I don't want to be a wife.
I don't know how to really interpret that information because I've never been married, so I can't give personal
But you know
experience.
what the role of a wife is. I mean, traditionally what that role
women
is.
Supposed to support men. Women tend to be very good. This is how I equate like a marriage to be in terms of like, you had the Chicago Bulls team of the 90s. Fantastic. Michael Jordan was the number one and Scottie Pippen was number two. Scottie Pippen was the best number two in that
Probably
era. Ever. Now, when Michael has an off day, Pippen stepped up, and that's how come they won 6 rings.
Yep.
So I view the role of the man as the Michael Jordan, where he goes up there, he leads, and then he has a woman in his life as like a Scottie Pippen, where she supports. And the day that like he has an off day, she can step up, and then the next game, Michael is back on track, and it goes again.
But I think women today have just as much interest in being Jordan as Pippen. And
this is true.
This is why couples are having to figure out a new way of doing things, because there's lots of women Michael Jordans in the world. There are a lot of fields, like my field, for example, overwhelmingly female. So I do a consultation group in an agency full of therapists. We have like 25 people in the group. We don't have a single man in the group. Not one.
That's staggering.
Yeah. So teaching, nursing, medicine, law, psychology, social work are all, undergraduate institutions in general can't find men increasingly. So I don't think women want to be Scottie Pippen anymore. I think they're saying, let's be peers here. Let's be sometimes you and sometimes me, but there's only one ball and 2 of us.
I know we're definitely shifting in terms of the dynamics between men and women, and I guess we can only look back maybe in another 50, 60 years and see if the shift was good or bad, and then we'll be able to educate those generations.
Because it's going to be less stress for men. If you have a partner who's a real partner, I notice for myself that even when I'm tired, I tend to keep pushing on, do more, even at my age. And I'm really learning, like to say to my wife, I'm really tired. Would you make the salad? I'll make the dinner. It's like not take it all on myself, but look for ways that I can share the load and share the responsibility. I think that's better for everyone.
I do agree. Sometimes sharing the load is good. It means then you have that Pippen Michael Jordan relationship where, like, on the days when Michael is off point, he just can't hit his 3-pointers. Pippen pulls up, with some triple doubles. So, I do think there's a space for that.
Well, look at the most recent NBA Finals. You have the MVP of the league there. But then you have a lot of role players. You have a lot of guys who are good at some part of the job, and they're all working together as a team, and the whole is more than the sum of the parts.
True, true. So you've explained that men find women's strong emotions destabilizing. So is it about fear of vulnerability or shame?
I think it is both of those, but there's another piece which doesn't get recognized enough, which is men tend to be not as comfortable with their own feelings. And so emotions are contagious. If you're with somebody who's upset, you start to get upset. It's almost like terrible analogy, but it's like vomiting. If somebody's vomiting, you start to feel like you're going to vomit. Emotions are the same way. If your partner is very anxious, you start to feel anxious. So men are tamping down the emotions because they're uncomfortable with what they're feeling. And they want to bring down the emotional tone of the whole conversation so that they won't feel so overwhelmed with their own feelings.
Okay, so I've got a question related to that because is it possible then that I can speak from personal experience. I have found that when situations have gotten kind of heightened in conversation with a girl, I have a 100% failure rate when I get emotional as well, in the sense of not able to articulate my points or shouting and saying things that when I cool down, I'm like, that wasn't really appropriate. So I'm wondering if, from a logical point of view, it makes sense to try to tamper the energetic tone in the conversation to say, okay, if you want to throw your toys out to the pram, fine. But I am not going to do the same, so that there's this balance where, because I find that if both people tend to be at elevated sort of like emotional states, in my experience, it's been 100% failure rate where it just blew up and got really bad. So is it possible then that it may not necessarily be from a place of shame, but more to try to logically tamper the temperature in the room?
Depends on what you're after. It's interesting that both examples you used were about men being angry. That's not the only emotion. What if the emotion we're talking about was joy or deep love or, lots of other feelings? I don't think those need to be tamped down. I think anger is an emotion that everybody needs to be careful about how they express because it can hurt people. But it's still an important emotion. Anger is your way of letting somebody know that you don't like the way things are going with them and you want them to be better. So anger is an important emotion, and it's important that I let you know when I'm angry, because otherwise you don't know that I don't like the way things are going. So anger is a positive, healthy emotion. So I think a lot of times I'll ask guys if they think that makeup sex is a real thing. And most of them will say, no, I don't think it is. And I say, that's because you don't let yourself go with your feelings. If you let yourself be more emotional, you'd find out what makeup sex is. And why do people like makeup sex? Because sometimes an open expression of feelings leads to great intimacy.
Okay, very interesting. Very interesting. So are current trends in female hypersexualization a form of control? And if so, does that reinforce men's fears?
Control of what by who?
Well, obviously they control the sexual market, and they can control men, because once men start to sleep with them, men can be a little bit sort of influenced and manipulated, because we tend to not necessarily think straight once we start to have sex with a woman, and we tend to, by default, I guess, want to go above and beyond, and that can be taken advantage of.
Well, I don't think that women are the primary beneficiaries of the hypersexualization of women. I think women are largely on the short end of that stick. So it certainly doesn't work well for young girls. And if I were raising a daughter now, I would be very worried about the message to young women that the way to have power, as you're saying, the way to have power and control is to use your body. It's a very disturbing message.
But this is what feminism seems to have pushed, where they have the same sort of sexual freedom as men, and that by being promiscuous is power and control and freedom.
Yeah,
So
that is not feminism. Feminism has a very strong position against the hypersexualization of young women. So that is not an expression of feminism by any means.
we seem to have different waves of feminism.
We
So,
are, absolutely. We're in the third wave now. Yes.
so the wave that we have now is I don't need a man. I can sleep with who I want. I can sleep with as many men as I want. I can expose my body on social media as much as I want because I have control and I can do what I like.
That was more the second wave of feminism. I'm glad to say that is changing, that the current feminism is much more male positive. I have a number of female colleagues who are women who are strong feminists who we have regular conversations about how to have a male positive feminism. So I'm glad to say I think that is changing in a good way.
I would hope so because I don't see it out there on the internet, but
I'm talking about in science and research. So
okay.
I'm not talking about in the culture right now, but I think it will change in the culture as well, because I think people are beginning to understand the problems with this.
Yeah, it does create massive social problems, that's for sure. So how does objectification, which you wrote about in Hidden in Plain Sight, connect to existential fear?
Objectification of women?
Yes.
I think that women don't like being objectified any more than you and I have been talking about men don't like being. So I think it's more obvious to us the ways in which women are objectified, but we're beginning to see the ways in which men are objectified too. And it's dehumanizing to me. Being objectified basically means I'm not seeing you as a person. I'm seeing you as a stereotype. You know, men are this, black people are this, women are that. So as soon as you start putting people in categories and thinking you know something about them, when you objectify people in that way, you eliminate the possibility that you might actually get to know them. One of the things that Jung said that was brilliant, Jung suggested to therapists that you start each new therapeutic relationship as if you'd never worked with anybody before in your life. Don't assume you know anything about them. Start from scratch, start fresh, and let them tell you about themselves as if you knew. So, for example, you know, I never want to see a file on anybody I've worked with. I don't want to know what somebody else thought. I want to get to know them myself.
I think that's a pretty good approach because I think that that's very similar to when you can have difficult conversations with people where you have to put aside what was in the past and have a conversation from zero. And that allows you to create a possibility to have a conversation where you can actually see each other's point of view instead of judging from the past.
But as you know, that is not an easy thing to do. So
very difficult.
You know, my mother would say that and 50 cents will get you in the subway. So that, you know, it's easy to say. Tells you how long ago she said it.
It's true.
But it's an extremely hard thing to do because we, I don't want to get too nerdy here, but your brain actually has 7 times more nerve fibers going from your brain down to your sense organs than from your sense organs up to your brain. So when you and I met, there was very little, we had very little ability to actually see each other for who we are. We have all kinds of ideas. Like you have ideas about what does an older white man do? And you had ideas about what does a psychologist do? And I had ideas, what does somebody from Barbados do? We have all these ideas in our head that make it very hard to just see a person for who they are.
It is true. It's true. I guess we have all these programs that have been instilled into us from birth.
From birth.
And it's very difficult to deprogram yourself, you know. And this is why I have my show and I have people on like you to help us to, you know, find some of these sort of like angles to deprogram ourselves, because I've certainly learned a lot in this conversation so far.
Me too.
Because my experiences are different from what you're saying, which is why I'm saying, okay, I need to see where you're coming from to get a better idea, which is why this is why I always tell people that it's best to put things on the shelf, because if you put things on the shelf, you can come back to them instead of just downright dismissing it, right?
So let me tell you a story about this. A long time ago, I used to work in a prison, and I would meet with young men one time, do an intake. And I don't know if this is true or not, but the impression I had was, because I'm a good listener, I'm a respectful, careful, considerate listener. So I would sit with these young men and I would listen to them. And I kept having the impression that this is the first time in their entire lives that anybody has sat and listened to them. And I thought, I'm not changing the world here. I'm just sitting with one person, but it's a radical thing to do, to sit with somebody different than you and just listen. And if we would all do a little more of that, it'd be a different world, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that said, we can take a very small pause to say, guys, if what we're exploring resonates with you, post this episode with hashtag hidden in plain sight and tag us at Adriano_246 or the Conscious Man 7 podcast on Instagram. Let's push this conversation into your community, ignite curiosity, and invite someone who needs to hear how fear keeps us from real intimacy. So let's dive into a little bit more of this culture that we have now, because we tend to have a simp culture today a lot with men. So
what culture?
Simp culture. So that's another.
I don't know.
Okay, so the generation, my generation and down, there's this term called simps. So what that tends to be is men who overly give women their attention and resources and get very, very little in return. Okay. Right? This mostly happens on the same OnlyFans platform, where these guys would sign up on their platform, send them money, right? Sometimes even thousands of dollars, right? And these girls just basically treat them like trash and a commodity, So this is where the term simp comes from. I don't know where it came from, but it's just the term that the younger generation uses now. Right. So now that you understand a little bit of simp culture, is simp culture a crutch for men trying to bury their emotional fears or a sign of insecurity?
The latter, I think. I mean, as you told me what it is, I felt terribly sad. Like, how lonely are these men who are sending thousands of dollars to total strangers who they know are not real? They know this is not a real relationship. Part of them knows that, but they're so desperately lonely. This is a huge problem in our society that we're going to have to figure out. If you look up the backgrounds of who's doing all the mass shootings, they are all lonely, isolated, mostly white young men. And so it's a problem. It's a big problem. And we are not doing much to address it.
Yeah, it's really sad to see because, I mean, I find that men today, and I think it's a combination of things. I think it is, one, the heavy use of video games, a lot of technology in their hands. I think there's also an element of the Me Too movement that has made men afraid to even approach girls. And also, I think is basically men tend to not even do much like physical exercise and take care of themselves. So the testosterone is low. So I think it's a combination of things. And I think it's really sad because, men are supposed to have certain attributes. And like you said, the other attributes, like being a father and showing love, very important. But it's almost like today, a lot of modern men don't even have either. They don't have the part that you're talking about, which would be the amina. They certainly don't have the masculine part where they're not even in shape. They don't seem to have dreams, goals, and ambitions. They're sexually deprived, because there was a very interesting stat that I saw where 30% of boys between 18 and 30 are either a virgin or not had sex for a year. 18 to 30%. That is insane. When I was 18, damn, I was pretty active, like, you know what I mean? All of my friends were as well. So, like, for me, it's kind of like, wow, how we've shifted so far in just one generation.
Yeah.
You know?
And, we have been largely acting like we don't care about those young men, and it's come back to bite us. And I hope that we're starting to understand that we've got to care about these young men and take more of an interest in their lives. Mostly what they're lacking are things like your show. Mostly what they're lacking are relationships with other men. That's what's missing more than anything. Some older men and some same age peers. But that is what is missing in most men's lives.
I totally agree. We have a lack of role models in our society today. And I mean, having good role models does affect women as well, because then when men are treating women the way they should, women would be like, oh, okay, so this is how I should be treated. And then they can look for partners that can treat them like that. But if you don't have any men in the world that set the example for boys and then show girls how they should be treated, then we just continue this spiral of debauchery, disintegration, and men not showing up,
And so kids are growing up not in families. Kids
Yes.
are growing up, and I don't know if you've ever spent any time in a single parent household, or have friends or whatever, but man, there is no job in the world that is harder than that. I mean,
It's true.
Raising kids with two people is the hardest job in the world. Raising kids by yourself and working and trying to keep the house up and all that, it's just a nightmare.
I couldn't agree more. So you've discussed the feminization of men. So how does that shape men's ability or inability to face fear?
Well, I think that it's not so much the feminization of men, it's more men being forbidden the experience of fear. Again, we talked earlier about anger being an important and adaptive emotion. Fear is too. Fear is what keeps you away from dangerous situations. So we need fear, and there are times when you should be afraid. The problem is, of course, is being afraid in situations where you don't need to be afraid. But fear is not something to be avoided. It's just something to be listened to. When you're afraid, there may be a good reason.
Yeah, and I find that we tend to live in fear to the point that it cripples us. We have a lot of inaction, and we tend to sit by and do nothing.
Yeah.
So I think that we do need to have more brave men in the world, right?
Yeah.
So, which brings me on to my next question then. So, why is there a narrative now that real men aren't needed? And is that just fear talking?
Well, I think that is chickens coming home to roost. We have looked the other way for generations as men treated women horribly. We allowed it. We enabled it. We were silent in the face of it. And I'm sure 40% of women in the world have been sexually assaulted by a man. It's a ridiculous number. It's an insane number. Okay. So women have reason to be scared of men, and we have gone along with that, right? And so now we're paying the cost of that. And so we have to find our way back to a place of peace and connection with each other, because we've done a lot of bad things. And we're going to have to figure out a way to reconnect with each other, men and women, in the light of that history.
I think that both sexes need to do a lot of healing.
Absolutely.
And forgiveness. And I think that one of the main challenges is that neither side is willing to accept culpability and also accept responsibility, then turn around to forgive themselves first so that they can forgive others. And because none of those things are going, things are just in this downward spiral right now. you know?
Well, I agree with you about what's needed, and I'd like to think that people are trying to find their way to it. I mean, I know the men I work with are trying to do exactly that. So I know there are some people in the world that are trying to do that. And I'd like to think that books like mine are helping men to do that, and shows like yours are helping men to do that. So I think there's content out there for men who are interested in having a better life, feeling better about themselves, being happier, healthier. There's a lot of content out there which is the opposite of that. But there is positive content out there, and we have to help our young men to find it.
Yes, and I think that the people that are listening to this show and also the people that read your book, they need to they need to share the book and my platform to other people so that we can get it in the hands of others, because the only way we can have a shift is if we actually shift ourselves. Yeah. But by shifting ourselves, we need to consume the content and then say, hey, Todd, this platform, this podcast may be interesting to you, or this book here might be interesting to you, XYZ, because we need to share. We can't keep it all to ourselves,
Yep, I agree.
So let's talk a little bit about the family and feminism and the nuclear dynamic. So you've said men's fears show up more in intimacy than outside privilege. So how does that shift when parenting roles become equal?
Say again what you heard me say.
You said that men's fears show up more in intimacy than in outside privilege.
Oh, I got it. Yeah.
Right. So how does that shift when parenting roles become equal?
Well, what I mean by men's fears show up more in intimate relationships is that the stuff we're afraid of, it doesn't happen at work. It happens in intimate relationship with women or other men, for that matter. And in terms of how that affects parenting, when parenting becomes equal, how does it becomes more equal? I think it's one of the best ways to help men be less afraid is to feel more confident about their role as a father, is to feel less inadequate, is to know that you really matter in this little person's life and you're doing things that are really important for them and really helping them to grow up and be a better person. And then there's that whole thing, when you get to be my age, you get to watch your kids and you think, oh, they're good people. I helped raise good people who are doing good things in the world. And so I helped, did a little something to make the world a better place.
You know what you said is true, because men tend to feel really good when they're valued, when they know that they've contributed. Yeah. There's this thing inside of us where we feel like 10 foot tall, like I actually did something positive, right? So
yeah, I mean, it's why I write, because I have a message that I'm trying. That's why I do podcast shows. I have a message, something that I think is helpful to people, and I want to do what I can to spread the word. I mean, that's the good side of social media, right? Like, I can't even tell you. So I've written 4 books, and the total readership of all of my books together is less than the average readership of one article I write online. So if I want to reach people, books ain't the way.
It's true.
It breaks my heart that that's true, but people don't read books so much anymore. They read blogs. So I write a blog because I'm trying to reach people and get the word out there. And the most effective way to do that is on a show like this.
It's true. The thing is, I'm a bit of a hybrid because I love books. Yeah. And I love podcasts and like blogs and stuff like that, because I can swing both sides in the sense of like with the podcast is like short and concise, but with the book, because I'm an academic in the sense of like I used to be a civil engineer, so obviously it took a long process to become that. So I love learning, and as a former engineer, my brain looks at structures and patterns and look to see how things connect. So I don't know if that's one of the reasons to why I love books so much. And if people give me books as presents, I actually like that, right? So I guess I'm a bit of an anomaly today in today's society.
Well, I think, to the parents listening to the show, the single most important thing, one of the most helpful things you can do to your kids is read to them. Teach them to love books. It's, the correlation between kids who read do better in school. No question about it. So teaching your kids to love reading is a great gift.
Yes, couldn't agree more. So, with feminism reshaping the power dynamic, are men feeling fear or liberation, or a confusing blend?
Confusing blend, absolutely. I mean, I think it's probably the most confusing time in history to be a man. And because all the rules are changing and it's not clear yet where things are going to settle out. So I don't know what the hell a good man is anymore. I mean, it's like, it's become very confusing. And for young men in particular, they're really, really lost. And that's why 30% of them are not having sex, because they're sort of just frozen in fear.
Yeah, that's a sad statistic because, I mean, I think, and this, I know some women can say, well, that's so bad, Todd, you know what I mean? But I do think that young boys need to have a lot of sex because there's this thing inside of men that drives them where, like, when you have high levels of testosterone, you're driven for success, and having sex with a lot of women is one of those things. It's not the most important thing, but it's an element to him going out there and trying to work hard, make money, and be driven, right? And that's just a byproduct of it. But the guys that don't tend to have much sex, they tend to be introverted. They don't have any dreams and ambitions. They certainly don't make a lot of money. And they end up being poor candidates for being boyfriends and husbands, right? So I think there's an element that has to take place.
I'd be more interested in having young men have intimate sex with a few people than have a lot of sex with a lot of people. I think there's more for them to learn in that.
I do agree. Like I say, I'm a bit of a hybrid. So I totally get that point of view. And I totally get the point of view of the other one. So possibly then it could be a blend of both, right? Where you have many close, intimate relationships. So you're still hitting both sides. But I do think there's an element of men having to have a lot of sex in their youth because you end up getting simps, you end up getting mass shooters, you end up getting people that with low testosterone, low ambitions.
I knew a young man who, when he was growing up, every Sunday at the same time, whatever time that was, his parents would go into the bedroom to take a nap. And they told the kids, do not knock on this door unless the house is burning down. Your mom and I are going to go take a nap. And it was every Sunday at 11, let's say. And I love that. I love that. I mean, so at a certain age, the kids figured out what their parents were doing. But I love that the kids knew that their parents were having sex regularly and enjoying it and looking forward to it.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant. Model, That's brilliant. That's
not brilliant. Hiding it. Sex isn't bad, shameful, but it's private. Don't knock on the door. Don't bother us.
It's true. Our time. So are these forces that we spoke about before quietly fracturing the nuclear family through control transfer, hyper independence, or emotional avoidance?
Clearly. I mean, I think, what is it? Less than 40% of kids grow up in a nuclear family. That's not the norm anymore.
That's sad.
And again, it's not that I think the nuclear family is some kind of magic, like the nuclear family is the best family. I'm not saying that, but two's better than one. I just spent a week, I told you, with my grandkids. So there were 3 adults taking care of 3 kids. That felt like barely enough. And when I left, I said, I feel guilty because now you guys, I know how hard I worked when I was here, and everything I was doing when I was here, you're going to have to, like, I cooked every night and I took care of the kids. And now you're going to have to do all that. And that's not a single parent family. That's 2 parents. It's just difficult. It's just hard work.
But I guess it's the laws of fun as well.
Of course it is. Of course it is. I had a great time. But it was easier to have fun when there were 3 of us.
True.
Harder for them to have fun when there's just 2 of them. And the kids have to do their homework, and the kids have to have a bath, and the kids have to have dinner, and and then it's bedtime.
So I believe that is why they say that it takes a village to raise a child.
Exactly.
And I think we've moved away from that village mentality, where everybody raises the children.
But people are moving back to small towns.
Really?
More and more I'm seeing that people are interested. They're looking for community. They're looking to live someplace where their kids, where they do have a village to help raise them.
I think that's really, really important. So you've mentioned that women often struggle to receive feedback without going defensive. So what's one tip to shift that mindset?
You said that. You said that. I don't think I said that. I think the easiest way to minimize defensiveness in anyone is to talk about yourself, not the other person. So, for example, let's say you and I are talking, and I don't like the way you're talking to me. I don't like how you're talking. I could say, you're not talking to me right. You're doing it wrong. That's bad. You shouldn't do that. You're going to be defensive because who am I to tell you how to talk? Or I can say, I just want you to know when you talk to me that way, I kind of shut down and I withdraw and I'm not very interested in what you have to say. I can tell you how your behavior affects me and you are much less likely because I'm not talking about you. I'm not telling you anything about you. I'm talking about me, I'm talking about how your behavior affects me. And most people, when they hear that, want to do better.
So then what you're saying then is that it's more the delivery than the actual words that are said, or is it a combination of both?
It's the delivery. It's more respectful and it's more responsible to talk about me instead of you. When you start telling other people about themselves, they're defensive. Who wouldn't be? It's not a respectful thing to do.
Okay, so basically, what you're saying then is that anytime anyone does something to you or is talking to you in a certain way, you are saying, this is how I feel.
Exactly. I'll give you a very simple example. It's an iconic story from my marriage. One day my wife looks at me and she says, we're getting ready to go out. And she says, that shirt doesn't look good on you. And I said, well, actually, I just went to my closet and this is the shirt I picked that I think looks good on me. But I don't really care. If you say to me, honey, I'm not very attracted to you in that shirt. If you go upstairs and put on the red shirt I like, I'll be more attracted to you. Watch me run up the stairs. Watch how fast I go change my shirt. If you don't make it a power struggle, if you don't tell me that I don't know how to, what's good looks good on me, if you just tell me how you're feeling about it, I won't be defensive at all. I want to look attractive to my wife. If you tell me you're attracted in this shirt, watch me go put it on.
Okay, so let's say then you said that to her and she had on a dress.
Mm-hmm.
How then, I mean, obviously you can't predict the future, but in your experience, how then would a woman react? Because my experience is...
I say to her all the time, that looks really good on you. I really like that. I know she's going to wear it more often. She wants to be attractive to me.
So you're saying even if she had on a dress, that the dress you were like, not really feeling that. And you said to her that dress maybe doesn't make me more attractive to you, but that one does.
I think she'd go put on that dress the same way I went and put on that shirt. Because look, if you're in a monogamous relationship, you're kind of, stuck with each other. So you need to be attractive to each other. So you want to do things to make your partner attracted to you.
Interesting. So in your couples workshop, what's a transformative moment when women held space for a man's sphere?
That is and then I'm going to ask that we wrap up because we're going to need to wrap up for me. That's a great question because it's amazing how powerful an effect it has. So first of all, my Psychology Today blog is read by slightly more women than men, which I think is really interesting. And when I do couples workshops, it's often the women who talk about the biggest impact on the relationships more than the men. So for women, Women are often taught that men are behaving the way they behave because it's about power and control. When women understand that men are scared, it opens their hearts to more empathy and compassion. Oh, you're not withdrawing because you're trying to pull a power play. You're withdrawing because you're scared. You're withdrawing because you're intimidated, because you don't know what to do. It opens the door to compassion in a very powerful.
Okay, I got 2 more questions for you, if you would.
Okay.
So you recommend men's groups as crucial.
Yes.
What about them makes a real difference?
Because men need to talk to other men. Because men are more open with each other when they're talking with other men. And they can learn how to be more open with women by learning through friendships with men. And so one of the chapters in the book that's most important to me is a sort of guide for men. What I suggest to them is that you look around for other guys who might like to read this book with you and have a book group, because it's going to open into deeper conversations because of the nature of the book. And so I sort of walk them through how to find other men who might like to have these conversations.
Okay. And you said curiosity is crucial. So how do men begin cultivating it towards women and themselves?
See if I can find I only have one bumper sticker in my life. I've only had one bumper sticker. I'm going to find it for you. Here it is.
Less judgment, more curiosity.
If you want to take one takeaway from this interview, the opposite of judgment is curiosity. Judgment is when I think I know who you are. Curiosity is what you did earlier in this interview. Well, I don't really agree with what he's saying, but I'm going to put it on the shelf and think about it. If we all practiced curiosity in place of judgment, the world would be an entirely different place.
Okay, and let's get you on this one. For both sexes seeking change, what's one practice or reflection you want people to act on today?
Learning how to listen. I've written a number of articles on Psychology Today with tips for listening. Learning how to be a good listener is one of the most profoundly respectful, intimate things you can do for another human being. Particularly learning how to listen to people who disagree with you respectfully.
I agree, because
there was a brilliant family therapist, Carl Whitaker, who said the most important point in a marriage is when your spouse is going on and on and on. You're thinking, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Finding the truth in it in that moment. Because they're not crazy. So there's some truth in what they're saying. You're just not hearing it.
Yeah, listening is powerful. And you know what you said about when you were in the prison, it kind of like is really true. You know, a lot of men out there, we don't really have anyone.
Never.
I saw a very interesting reel on Instagram last week, and it was 2 reels that were spliced together, and one of them was a girl asking a question. So who do you go to when you need to talk to someone or you need some support or whatever? And then you reel cut, and then you just saw these bunch of men saying, no one. You know what? There's literally no one in our corner.
So for men who are listening to this show, find a way of getting other men in your life to talk to. And the book may help you do that. You can maybe do a book group and invite other men who you're interested in getting to know to read the book with you. But however you do it, your church, your basketball league, I don't care how you do it, but find a way of having real conversations with others.
Yes, I concur, because last week I went out with some lads, some Spanish lads, and it just happened where I went to the gym on Friday. One of my mates in the gym, he says, hey, Todd, we're going to this place. You want to come? And I was going to do some work and stuff on the podcast. And then something just came into me and said, but Todd, you have flexibility in your life.
Right.
You're not really seeing anybody now. You don't have to do this thing. And it was like, yeah, cool, let's do it.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, Avrum, I had a great time. It was like so good to be just, and they have similar mind. And one of the guys I never met before. And it was such a great chat. And they both have families. And we said, this was such a good night. We can do it once a month, every month.
There you go.
So we need to have some sort of like a tribe, a community, group of men where you can bounce stuff off, because
and it was as simple as just inviting you. That's all they have to do.
Yeah. And
find men in your life who you think are interesting and invite them.
Yeah, man. So anyone out there listening, guys, you need to find your tribe. You need to find people that you can hang with. And you don't have to agree with every single thing that they say and they do, but as long as there's a lot of commonality, and like you said today, Dr. Avrum, curiosity, then that allows you to foster good relationships. And that is both sexual relationships, platonic relationships, and then business relationships as well. And we're here on this platform to try to help improve that part of us in the human experience, which is relationships. So, Dr. Avrum, it's been a really, really cool talk to you today.
Can't believe we talked for 2 hours. See, we're telling other men to talk to other men, and we're modeling what we're talking about, because we just talked for 2 hours.
Absolutely. So tell the lovely people at the Conscious Man 7 where they can find you, anything that you want to plug, or anything you have going on that you would like to tell us about, and all of that good stuff.
You can find me. You can email me and you will find links to my writing at avrumweissphd.com. You'll find links to the book there. You'll find links if you want to sign up for my mailing list. I'll send you a free ebook on relationships, and then you'll get copies of articles as I write them.
Awesome. And the links to all of those will be in the description of this podcast. Great. And guys, if you like conversations like these and you would like to learn more about the things that we spoke about, I also help you with these areas in your life, but I do it through fitness. I help spiritually inclined people burn fat and build muscle. So if you would like to make some changes in your life, level up in your mindset, spirituality, and also your physical body, hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246, or my name Todd Cave. And let's see if we're a good fit for the Compound Body Training Army. And guys, I also help you to, if you're on a spiritual journey, or you would like to start a spiritual journey, I can help you to get some magic mushrooms. So if you would like some help with that and connect with some magic mushrooms and to overcome some of the stuff in your subconscious mind, hit me up again at me, on Instagram at Adriano_246, or my name Todd Cave on Facebook. And if you would like to support this podcast, you can do that by visiting our merch store on Amazon with the name Todd and Me. We have some cool tank tops, hoodies, shirts, and sweats. Link to that store will be in the description of this podcast. And I have on one of those shirts today. We have on the Todd and Me collection.
Okay.
So if you would like to help us out with some video editing, and also to help us to do some research and get some more cool and amazing guests like Dr. Avrum today, visit our merch store and help us out. And guys, Dr. Weiss has pulled the curtain back on what's truly going on beneath our relationships. Thank you very much, Dr. Avrum. Listeners, if this sparked something inside of you, share this episode, leave a comment on what shifted, and subscribe for more conversations that challenge, connect, and change. Now go reflect and stay conscious. Guys, this was an absolute another awesome conversation. I've wanted to have a conversation like this from the time I started my podcast. And, I'm so happy to have had this conversation with Dr. Avrum. So many thanks again for coming on to the show. And guys, remember, we have some more great, amazing guests coming. So stay tuned. And remember, keep smiling, keep shining, and keep being the change you want to see. Speak to you soon. Cheers and namaste.